Well, good morning, everybody. I am very happy to be here with you this morning. There's three things I love talking about: my kids, national parks, and the Horticulture Center. I'm going to spare you the first two, although at 11:15 I'm happy to talk about those. And for the next hour, I want to share with you what we've been doing at the Horticulture Center, and hopefully come out and visit us, and you can see what we've been doing as well. Okay, sorry, I got all this technology. So I know there's some familiar faces in here. Just to give you a little bit of background for those who are not familiar with the Horticulture Center, it is part of the Department of Agriculture. So I heard you guys got a tour of the farm yesterday. So the farm is more for the agronomy students and for the animal science study. The horticulture is part of the Department of Agriculture, focuses more for the hort and the soil science in the Department of Agriculture. It is in its 12th year in operation. It's located on the north end of Rab Road. It's sandwiched between the ISU golf course to the south, and I'm going to show you some pictures here in a second, Constitution Trail to the east, and the Corn Belters to the north. It is open dawn to dusk every day of the year. We estimate probably over 3,000 visitors, but it's really tough to always know that count when you're open dawn to dusk every day of the year, and you're not there dawn to dusk every day of the year. But we have several events at the Horticulture Center that we welcome the public to come. I mean, they can come anytime, but these events are some of our big outreach opportunities. So the first one is our Children's Garden Party at the end of June. We collaborate with ISU Baseball Night. So you can come out there and have your dinner and then go across the street and watch the Corn Belters play baseball. And that's in June. Actually, that's the first event of the year. Then we have a Fourth at the Hort. And this is more of an event for volunteers and staff and donors. And then every year we have a different theme. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So we'll come back to that. We usually try and have an event centered around that theme. And then our big fundraiser for the year, that's our Autumnal Festival, and that's in September, and we raise about 100 different types of cucurbits being gourds, squash, pumpkins, and then we sell those, and we have, hay rack rides and corn mazes and all that fun stuff. And we have a bunch of new things planned for this year, so we're going to take it up a notch. All right, so this is the Horticulture Center, and you're looking at facing east. You can see where the cars are parked, and then if you go just a little bit to the east, that's the trail there. The road is Rab Road to the north, and then the ISU golf course would be down below. So we have, does this have a pointer? No? All right, that's fine. So I'm just going to go quickly over some of the gardens here, but up to the tippy-toppy over here, you see there's an outdoor classroom going on. You can see they're like little curved lines. That's our brand new project, and we're going to talk about that for a little bit. And then we have a volunteer garden and a shade garden. We have a fruit, grain, herb, vegetable. Down at the bottom is our pinetum, and a pinetum is a collection of cone-bearing plants. And then over here all the way to the left, this is our moon garden. So we have many different gardens at the Horticulture Center. Now, if you turn around and you face to the west, you're looking at the children's garden there. That's probably our biggest garden if you do not include the Prairie, and the Prairie is directly to the west. So when the center was created, it was created first and foremost for the students as an outdoor laboratory. It also serves as research. We have different types of a lot of biology goes out there for research, and then the third component is outreach, like those events that we talked about already. These are some of our horticulture classes in the Department of Agriculture. These classes all go to the Horticulture Center to work out there. Some classes work a lot more than others. It kind of depends on the class. We're estimating that there's about 450 students in our department that use the laboratory. But then you have students in fine arts, you have students in biology that also use the center as that outdoor laboratory. and there's students in Heartland, there's students at Lincoln. So a lot of people using the center. And then we host field trips of all different ages throughout the year at the Horticulture Center. All right, so where are we going here? All right, so I had to dig up this picture. So this is me when I graduated from ISU in 1993, and I graduated actually in the department that I work in. And in the spring of 1991, I took Introduction to Horticulture with Dr. Ballback. And before then, I had kind of wandered, didn't know what I wanted to do. And the minute I started taking that intro class, it was like ding, 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 ding. I knew that horticulture was what I wanted to do. We did all kinds of cool things. We did little landscape designs. We learned about indoor plants. We learned how to take care of plants. And it was just spectacular. And so I finished with that degree in 1993. But I have to tell you, honestly, I was a little insecure about a couple things. And two of those things, the first one was we never touched any type of equipment. So no lawnmowers, no weed trimmers, nothing. So when I went out into the field, I was a little bit nervous about that. And the other thing is at the time, there's no horticulture center. We were taught about hardscape and how to install like a retaining wall, but we never got hands-on practice on doing that. And so I can tell you that as I went into the field after 1993, I was kind of a little bit unsure of myself, but I want to give you as an example, Samantha here. Samantha, this is Tuesday. This picture I took on Tuesday. The 120 class now, we have 70 students this semester that are taught by Nick Pershey. And Nick makes sure that the last 6 weeks of the semester, the whole entire class takes place at the Horticulture Center. And that every single one of those students, they're not all Hort majors, they can come from, they can be anywhere across from campus, but a good chunk of them are Hort. He makes sure that they all learn how to use a push mower, a weed trimmer, this is the small Kubota tractor, the zero-turn mower, that they know how to mulch and spade and how to properly plant a plant. And these were all things that really I did not learn, not in the 90s, early 90s. Samantha, I was out there with her. I taught her my way of learning how to use a Kubota tractor. So I'm like, you got to put it in the bunny drive, and she's like, I'm so scared, I'm so nervous. And I'm like, this tractor really doesn't go very fast. You can't do anything to hurt this tractor. I mean, she's been around for a while, and she was just so nervous. And I have to say that the gentleman before her, I think he was trying to keep us calm, but he had never been on a small tractor either, and he was pretty nervous. He was pretty quiet. And then, she put the tractor, she put the tillers on there, and she tilled the whole way down, and it was like, yes, you can do it. Which I think it's one thing to tell our Hort students, yeah, you're going to get experience in using this equipment. But I also think it's another thing for people who think, I could never do that. And in many cases, they're women, young girls who've never had to do it or didn't think they could do it, and yes, you can. Anybody can do it. You can do this, and you can do much, much more. So I'm a little bummed here because I was telling you that we have this project. This is the outdoor classroom that I was kind of trying to pinpoint on that big slide. I had some really cool drone footage of the students working on this project. For several years, as I said, the center is 12. One of the things that we've lacked at the center is a place to congregate under shade. We have a series of little trees when people come, and if it's a hot day, everybody sits under the little trees on these picnic tables, or we put a tarp down and we sit under these little trees, for whatever it is, for a class or for a tour. And so a couple years ago, we got this idea to have an outdoor classroom at the center, and we got a grant from ISU, from the sustainability group, I guess, for this grant for this outdoor classroom. So the students got experience in how to build this from the very beginning. Here, they laid the foundation, they're laying the stone, and the drone footage was really cool because it showed them all working together, but this gives you the idea. We have finished placing the rock and the patio down here, and the back area is all planted, and we're actually on stage like 2, 3, and 4 now, and we've written some grants for that. The one we're really hoping to get is the sails, which would be the cover for this outdoor classroom, and then also to have screen to the north of this, because that's Rav Road and it's pretty busy. So, you know, hopefully if all goes well, we'll get that within the next year and probably next 2 years, and we'll get that installed. And this would be a huge asset, because now those classes that I told you that we teach out there, I mean, you know, they'd be sitting or standing anywhere, but now they have a place to sit, and there's a place where the lecturer can speak. So we are very, very happy about our outdoor classroom. And all of that, this was 2 different classes, a 120 class and then the 300 landscape. What was that, your landscape class? 200 level that actually built this last fall. All right. So students can get involved, right? Like we talked about, a whole class can come out there. There's also independent studies and internships, and this is just some examples of what the students are doing. This year we have a student who's working on a native prairie plant garden. Actually the same student's working on a monarch butterfly way station. I have one student now that designed the vegetable garden, and she's growing all the plants in the greenhouse and already started planting the vegetables out in the vegetable garden. There's another student who's growing all the annuals for the gardens. She designed it, and then she's growing the plants for that. There's one student this summer that says cover crops in the cucurbits. The cover crops she's going to do this summer between our different rows of pumpkins. She wants to try growing like fava beans and field peas and different types of crops. And then here's some other examples. It's not only in Hort and Ag. I had a student a couple years ago that did a video for 10 years of the Hort Center. And that was a communication student. We've had fine arts students that have done graphic design for us, as well as sculptures. So it is open to any student across campus. They can use this Horticulture Center. All right, so this again is the picture of all the gardens. And I am going to slowly go through this. And every time you see these, this is either an individual project or a class project that has built or participated in taking care of these gardens. And I think what's really cool is that some of these students have left a fingerprint, some of these students have left a whole handprint at the center. But this isn't a couple people building the center. It's a group of us. And it's a group of students that are dedicated, they have great ideas, that are hardworking. They're just really, really amazing individuals. All right, so that was my first section I kind of wanted to share with you. The second section is the Prairie. So I've talked about the Prairie before. The Prairie is really my favorite area at the Horticulture Center. Do you know, I've asked this question before, do you know how much of Illinois was covered originally in Prairie? You could shoot out a couple numbers. Too high. 90 is too high. And I'll tell you why in a minute. That's why 90, but it's actually 61%. 61%. So then everything else was, you know, like the creeks, the rivers, and the forested areas along those areas, excuse me. Do you know how much of original prairie remains in Illinois? 5% at the most, 3%, 1%. It is, one is being generous. It is 0.01. 1% of 1%. You know what? So original remnant prairies are found in places that were very difficult to farm or not possible. So a lot of our old cemeteries from the 1800s, There's one on 24, was that Weston? Weston, right? That's kind of in your neck of the woods. Yeah, east of you, towards Gridley, right? Or past Gridley. Yeah. East of Chenoa. Parklands Foundation, which is a non-for-profit, has a remnant prairie that's a hilltop. Really can't get equipment in there. And also the old railroad tracks. But the problem about the old railroad tracks is now with the high-speed rail, those old plots are disappearing. And so there's kind of this concerted effort to get in there and get the seed and get the plants before the whole railroad, the high speed's in there. So I thought I was just going to share some information about prairies with you this morning. And I can't talk about the prairie without giving you some type of passage from an author. So my author today is Willa Cather. And actually, Monica's going to pass this out to you. And I will read this to you. This is for my Antonia. And I love the way that Willa writes this, because in my head, like, this is the way I kind of picture the prairie. And especially when we're driving like across Kansas or Nebraska, this passage always sticks in my head. So I'll start it here. So let me put it up there for you. Let me have a sip of water. This is a tiny bit wordy. Okay, so chapter 1. Cautiously, I slipped from under the buffalo hide. I got up on my knees and peered over the side of the wagon. There seemed to be nothing to see. No fences, no creeks, or trees, no hills or fields. If there was a road, I could not make it out in the faint starlight. There was nothing but land. Not a country at all, but the material out of which countries are made. No, there was nothing but land, slightly undulating, and I knew because often our wheels ground against the brake as we went down into the hollow and lurched up again on the other side. I had the feeling that the world was left behind, that we had got over the edge of it and were outside of man's jurisdiction. I had never before looked up at the sky when there was not a familiar mountain ridge against it. But this was the complete dome of heaven, all there was of it. The wagon jolted on, carrying me, I knew not whither. I don't think I was homesick. If we never arrived anywhere, it did not matter. Between that earth and that sky, I felt erased, blotted out. I did not say my prayers that night. Here, I felt what would be. So beautiful, isn't it? And the idea of that dome, so I always think of like this ginormous cake. You know how you put the glass dome on top of cake? Like I just picture that on top of the prairie. And there's just something like so beautiful and comforting. This summer we're going, my daughter's graduating this year, and she wants to go to Olympic National Park and camp. And so we are driving cross country. And I am one of those weirdos that's really looking forward to going across Nebraska to see this. I like it. I like going along the Platte River. I think it's pretty cool. All right, so I kind of promised this picture a little while ago. You see where the gardens are now, the children's garden. If you're working with me, that whole middle area is the prairie. And there's a creek that kind of bisects it, that comes overflow from the pond, goes diagonally. It pretty much dumps in the golf course. So if you're right, it dumps in the poor ISU golf course. So we've started talking about ways to deal with that water. But the area that's right around that creek is really bad prairie. Actually, I wouldn't even call it prairie. It's really all invasives. And so we are working really hard to try and get rid of that. And the way we do that is mow it and use Roundup. And do not till it. You never want to till it, because all you do is bring up more weed seed. So this is the core, the middle part is actually pretty good prairie. We burned it this year and we burned it last year. And I think, hold on, here, 1 second, Miss Monica. Oh, I think I'm going to say a couple things before you can do that. I'm sorry. Why burn a prairie? Pardon me? In some species that can happen. What else? Yeah, that for us, this is the big one to get rid of the invasives. And so our prairie is working on 11 years, and last year was the first year we burned it. We should have burned it in year 5. But it's just a sticky thing when you're with the state and getting the permits. And so finally, like Grounds is like, we'll help you, which God bless Grounds. And Grounds came out last year and they burned it for us. So we have a little bit of footage of that. We'll show it one, or you can show it right now. Let's just do that right now. This hopefully will work. Because it's on. Oh, maybe not. It's not going to work. It's on Facebook, the footage. So I don't know how many of you have ever seen a prairie burn, but we recorded it last year. And like I said, it was Grounds who helped us with this burn. They did. They backburned it. Did someone say that? Yeah. This year we didn't. We didn't need to this year. The wind was coming from the east instead of the west, so they just started at the end and it went down. But they did backburn it last year. And then you could see there's the Grounds guys. There's the creek. And you can see those little yellow squares are our beehives. Made sure we mowed around them so they didn't catch on fire. We have a collaboration with Joe Sibley. His wife is the extension leader here in McLean County, and he gets the honey. I mean, we just want the bees, and the bees are very, very helpful for pollination for the pumpkins, gourds, and squash. And I think the center is a pretty good location for them because, like, we have a lot of dandelions and clover too, early food for them in the season, and then the prairie, and then the sunflowers, and so. So that's a good question. The wind turbine is part of the renewable energy major. So that is all of our energy. Whenever we need a glue gun or a saw, we plug into that little building, and that's our power. And that's the only power that we have there. They use it for class and research purposes. So I think it's going to come to an end here. So this is right in there, and that you're looking at right there. Big blue stem, little blue stem, or probably Indian grass are probably the big ones. But really, it's mostly forbs, and your forbs are your wildflowers. I mean, when we planted this 10 years ago, they told me only 10% grass. Everything else should be your flowers because the grasses will take over. So there's our little bit of our footage. This is really kind of amazing when you see the it take place, and the flames like go up so high, but the minute they hit the turf, it's done. Is this me again now? So we already learned about why burn a prairie and what's the importance of a prairie for students. And I think there's so many, but in horticulture, I think it's really important if our students are going to go out there and be landscape designers, that they know that not only can they identify and they know what prairie plants are like, but that they understand that the environment and that they flourish in. It's more than just planting cup flower by the side of your house, because there's a whole entire uh-oh. It's a whole entire environment. Oh, is that still playing? We're getting there. Yeah, technology. Oops, sorry, that's me. All right, so why burn a prairie and the importance of prairie for students? I think like last year, the biology professor had the students come out and collect Baptisia seeds. So, I mean, we use it for identification purposes. And for our students to learn about the environment. But then biology, Lincoln College has used it as well. There's only one little other section I wanted to share with you about the prairie, and that is not there. That's what the burn looked last year. This year, it didn't do as well. Along the creek, it was so wet, it wouldn't catch. So really, there's just that big triangle that burned. Those little squares, you see the little squares all the way to the right? Those are the biology, there's 3 of them right there. Those are the biology research plots. And those suckers, if we cut the grass down, rake it, and haul it, it takes us about 2 full days. To burn it, 15 minutes, done. It is really incredible. It is really, really incredible. And then I just want to share one more thing, and this is on the west side of the Horticulture Center. We have this collaboration with the Parklands Foundation. I mentioned them. They're a non-for-profit that protects the land along the Mackinac watershed in McLean and Woodford counties. And so we got this idea about saving plants that are just from Illinois. So like a 90-mile radius, but they have only ever been in Illinois. And my example here is the rest of that prairie that you saw. When we started that prairie, I called Prairie Moon Nursery in Minnesota, and I said, I'm in central Illinois, I have wet mesic soil, and they have a database of all the plants that grow in more of a wet prairie in central Illinois. And then they order the seeds from like Kansas or Wisconsin, and then they send them to me. The difference is this little collection on the west side has never left Illinois. And we're trying to really like get those plants from the old railroad tracks, from the cemetery. This one here is an example I have for you. This is Canadian Burnett. And when I wrote it down and typed it into Google as Canadian brunette, and then all the images that came, I'm like, why are all these women with brown hair keep popping up? So like, it took me a second. I'm like, oh, that's Burnett. So this is not a very common prairie plant at all, but it is beautiful. The foliage has on the margins is really jagged, and then it's got a beautiful flower. So we're hoping that in a year or two that we could collect the seed and expand that, and then actually bring more of those over to the east side of the Horticulture Center. So it's starting as a seed bank, yes. Yeah, and that's the most important. My most important thing is we know that they only came from Illinois, and second, that I'm hoping to do more threatened species. And these plants are on drip irrigation. They're mulched. I mean, these are baby prairie plants. So far, like, they're doing pretty well. All right, and then I told you I was going to talk about this a little bit. I told you that every year we have a different theme. And then you might have seen our display outside the door. In the past, we've done, let's see, when the university turned 150, we did an 1857 garden. When the Department of Agriculture turned 100, we did a 1911 garden. My favorite one. In 2012, we did the Garden of Ill Repute. I don't know if anybody remembers. We showcased wicked plants and the vile acts they commit. That was a great year. It was just a great year. And then this year is the Chronicles of the Kingdom Plantae, legendary plants and their storied pasts. So each of the dioramas out there are showcasing plant legends. And what we hope to do at the center this summer, we will do at the center this summer, is have plants in all the different gardens and a short little plant legend about them. So I was going to share 4 of those plant legends with you. The first one here was my plant legend. This is sweetgrass, and actually, Monica has a sample. We'll pass this around. This is a native plant. This is dried. Actually, I have a live plant too. I have a live and a dried that we'll pass around so you can get up close to it. But I thought this was a really interesting legend. This is a Native American legend, and it's the little description that we have is it's the eldest of known plants. Sweetgrass represents the hair of Mother Earth. So, like, Monica, can you hold that? This is the hair. It's supposed to be the hair of Mother Earth. Individually, the strands are strong and sacred, but when they're braided together, they signify unity and thus make the braid stronger. And you should smell it. Just smell it, because that's really sweet grass. That's really what it is, sweet grass. Each lock brings together the mind, the body, and the spirit. Sweetgrass is revered and is collected with respect and admiration. When the grass is burned during ceremonies, it brings positive energy to the individual and keeps at bay evil forces. So this is Hierochloe odorata. This is sweetgrass. So we're going to try growing this grass at the Horticulture Center, and it does grow more in northern Illinois, but I've read it's kind of a tricky grass to get started, but it's really, really quite cool. Yes. Yeah, interrupt right, yes. Uh-huh. I better go there on the way to, yeah, I better go there. I will look it up. Okay. Okay. Sweetgrass. Then I bet you they're growing sweetgrass. That's awesome. All right, so all the dioramas out there were either done by staff or a volunteer. And I love this fan flower. This one was kind of amazing. I had a student, Sydney. Sydney comes into my office like in January, and she goes, "If you need any volunteers, I'm here for you." She's a brand new Hort major. Actually, she's I think a junior, but she just changed her major into Hort, and she's incredible. And so I said, "Yeah." I said, "Are you crafty? Would you like to do a diorama?" And I explained what we were doing, and she's like, "Yeah, I'd love that." And I said, "Well, let me share with you one of the plant legends." And so I shared with her. This is Scaevola. This is called the fan flower. Monica there has an actual real life fan flower. It's an annual, it grows really well in the sun, pretty hardy, and it's called the fan flower because all of its petals are on one side. Yeah. So I told Sydney this, and she's like, "Yeah, I know this plant. I grew up in Hawaii." I know. I'm like, out of all the plant legends I could have given her, it was the first one. She's like, "I'd be happy to do Scaevola." So here's the plant legend. So the legend goes that a beautiful and kind Hawaiian princess fell in love with a commoner. And they both looked to the gods for approval of their relationship, but the gods instead sent a storm to the island, refusing to accept the relationship. The princess fled to the mountains to live in solitude for the rest of her days, while the commoner went to the sea. But before they parted, however, the princess took the flower from her hair and tore it in half, giving the other half to her love. And this is why the flowers found in the mountains and near the ocean bloom in halves. It's kind of sad. But this is her diorama, which is really quite adorable. So this is Scaevola. Then we have lavender. This one out there was done by Linda Ferentz. Actually, Linda worked for me for about 3 years, and this thing is amazing. All these little Greek people that she made is all by hand. Everything there she made completely by hand. Okay, let me read you this mythology. We have a little treat here that we're giving you of lavender sachets. So, according to Greek mythology, we owe the creation of lavender plant to Zeus, the king of all Greek gods. Mythology indicates that Leto, a bride of Zeus and mother of twins Artemis and Apollo, was stung by a bee. Leto became very angry and conjured up a swarm of purple birds to attack and devour the bees. Nearby beekeepers saw the birds attacking the bees and began a desperate attempt to kill the birds. The only weapons they had were slingshots. The beekeepers quickly killed off the birds by hurling stones with their slingshots. Zeus became aware of the fight, and as a sign of support for the beekeepers, or perhaps due to his love of honey, he transformed the dead purple birds into lavender plants. And that's how lavender was created. Yes. Very, very cool. I got one left that I'm going to share with you here. By the way, this is Monica. Monica started off as a volunteer at the Horticulture Center. And then after some years of a volunteer, she decided she wanted to come back and finish and get her horticulture degree. And so she has one more year before she graduates. And she's working full-time at Heartland. And Monica's incredible. Anything you see on Facebook, not me, Monica. all the planning for events, for the dioramas, for the theme. This is all Monica helping me with. She is an incredible assistant and friend. All right, so this is an actual, it's actually in the cucurbit family. This is a Tennessee spinner. And Monica is going to hand you out a Tennessee spinner. And I don't really think this is a legend so much. This is like a true story, because this is, it's Seed Savers in Decorah, Iowa says this is the story about the Tennessee spinner. So, children living at the foot of the Appalachian Mountains would play with Tennessee spinning gourds, also known as dancing gourds. One boy in particular, who despised math lessons, would pull out a spinner gourd from his pocket and he would play with it during class. So the trick is, if I could borrow your spinner, it's pretty darn easy to spin this on its butt, right? But to flip it so that it spins on its top is actually a little trickier. So you can try that at home. You can try that at home. Anyhow, so that he would play with it. So later on, when he became a grandfather, he went out looking for these little gourds to share with his grandchildren, and he couldn't find it anywhere. And so he kind of gave up, and then eventually, as the story goes, he was at the general store in Hickman County, Tennessee, when he stumbled upon a basket of miscellaneous odds and ends, and he found the Tennessee spinner in there, and he bought it, took it home, and then opened it up, and the seeds were still viable. And so he gets credit with bringing back the whole Tennessee spinner line back. So, and yeah, which is really, this is kind of amazing. So I don't know if you caught on. Anytime you see green up there, that means you're getting something. Just to help me remember that you're getting something. Okay, so that's the plant. I'm sorry, I went ahead of myself. Don't look at him yet. But so that's our theme for this year, and we really welcome you to come to the Hort Center to learn about these plant legends. Like I said, we hope to have them through all the different gardens and to share like plants and learning about plants in a new way. But now, my last section that I wanted to talk to you about kind of involves this man. Does anybody know who this man is? Like some of you ISU people. Yeah, do you know who this guy is? Yeah, Joe Armstrong. Good job. It's Joe Armstrong. So Joe Armstrong is a professor in biology. He's a botanist. He's still the curator of the Herbarium, but he's retired now. And Joe, just like if you thought of a botanist, I always think that Joe is like the perfect botanist. So I've known Joe a long, long time. So I kind of said that I graduated from ISU in '93. Also went to Metcalf and U-High. And when I was at Metcalf, my mother was getting her PhD in Felmley in biology. And I remember playing there, and Joe would walk by, and it's like the minute Joe walked by, like, you behaved. I mean, not that he said anything mean, but it was like that kind of presence, like you better behave. So when I started working in ISU, I started talking to Joe, and I told him that story, and we got to know each other. And Joe has this idea. This is Joe's idea. His idea was if you took the Horticulture Center and you took the Herbarium, and we're going to talk about that in a second, and you took the Felmley greenhouses, we'll talk about that, and you took the Fell Arboretum, and you put them all together, you know what you have? You actually have a botanical garden. So botanical gardens are comprised of all those components. And so for many, many years, he's been like, let's do this. Let's bring all these gardens together at the university. And there are several other, like Monica could probably say faster than I can, but there's other universities that have botanical gardens. Missouri is one that has one. So I would say since early 2000, he's had this idea. In the last couple of years, there's really been a lot of support on campus for this idea that we could bring everybody together and we can use all this is a horrible thing, we call it assets. It's our term in all our meetings. We call them assets, but we can use it to get more students involved in all these different entities, to learn, to get support for some of the things that we really need at the herbarium or the greenhouse. So let me share the different components with you. So we'll start with the herbarium. So how many people knew that ISU had a herbarium? How many people know what a herbarium is? So there's a couple of people. So Monica actually, I did not have the guts to ask Joe for some of these specimens. So we're actually sharing some specimens that a student, yeah, or you could even hold a couple up. So the herbarium is named after George S. Vasey. It started in the 1870s. And what it is, it's a collection of dried plants, pressed plants. So if you go into the Family Science Annex building, if you were to walk into the herbarium, this is what you would see. You'd see all these file cabinets. And then if you open up the file cabinets, you see all these pressed plants, and they're grouped in families. And these cabinets are specifically made so insects can't get in there, you can't get any rain in there. And biology uses all these pressed specimens then for teaching. And the collection's really, really amazing. I think they have some that are about 200 years old that they got from Europe, some colleagues in Europe in the 1800s. There's, you know who John Wesley Powell is? Right. So what did John Wesley Powell do? Like he's really well known for. Yes, those are all good, but that's the one I was looking for. Right, John Wesley Powell actually taught at Wesleyan and ISU, and he was the first, he had an expedition down the Colorado River. He was the first one to go down there. And the year before, they went down to scout it out on how they were going to go down the Colorado River, and he took Mr. Vasey with him. And Mr. Vasey collected plants from that first scout trip. And then the next year, they actually went down, and Vasey did not go on with them because, plant presses and water, not a good mix, right? But in the herbarium, they have the collection of this expedition. They also have in the herbarium, there was a woman, oh gosh, and I forget the woman's name, but she lived in the Great Basin area, and she would travel I don't know, the turn of the century, she would travel around the Great Basin out west, and she would do her pressings on teeny little pieces of paper because she couldn't carry the big, it was just so heavy. So Joe said that she would take teeny little pieces of paper, and you would have several plant pressings on one sheet of paper. And they have all her collections in the herbarium. And they also have I don't know, Mr. Felmley, but his wife collected plants, and they have her collection in the herbarium. So it's just a very, it's kind of a cool thing that we have this. And here's an example of why it's important. Does anybody know what this plant is? This is kind of a common out west. Yes, very good job. Good job, Bob. Indian paintbrush. This is Indian paintbrush. And so they have pressed samples of Indian paintbrush in the herbarium. And if you look there, it says Indian paintbrush, gives the Latin name, collected 1909, bluffs above the Mackinac River east of Kappa. I'm going to bring up Parklands one more time. This is actually the Merwin Preserve, part of the Parklands Association to the east of us. So for restoration purposes, it's really nice to know what's in the herbarium because, okay, that above the bluffs there was Indian paintbrush. So now you could go back and reestablish Indian paintbrush. So I don't, this is Joe's territory, but they have 50,000 to 60,000 vascular plant specimens and over 4,500 species and over 200 plant families. So it is quite a collection. And I find with all my Hort students, have you ever heard of a herbarium? Nope, never heard of it. So we're really trying to get the word out there about the herbarium. How about the biological science greenhouses? Are people familiar with that? Yeah, Bob, you know it all. You know it. Yeah, so the biology greenhouses, this is the curator. This is Bethany Evans. And she's babying this corpse plant. That's what that is. The corpse plant? Yeah, that when it blooms, it's supposed to smell like something awful, right? And so, but usually brings a really good attendance to the greenhouse, because people want to see it. It doesn't happen very often. So she's in charge of it. And what they have a living plant collection. So, at the Horticulture Center, as soon as fall comes around, we either bring some of those plants in the greenhouse or they're done. And our greenhouse is very small, so we can't bring very many plants in. But in here, she grows things like coffee, rice, cinnamon, vanilla. What else am I? Like chocolate. So the students can go see these plant families and these actual plants. She also has plants from different environments. So there's like the cactus, the ferns, and students can go and see this diversity of plants. So here's a picture of this greenhouse. Yeah, it's lovely. I actually took in 4-H a picture of like a hibiscus, not that hibiscus flower, but it was one in this greenhouse and got a purple ribbon. So this greenhouse means a lot to me, and it is really, really in need of help. It is in kind of bad shape, and it's really, I think, very important. You know, we had a fine arts class in here not too long ago that I brought over with Bethany, and they were learning about all the plants in here. So it's not only biology and hort students, but we can get students from many different disciplines. All right, and then the Fell Arboretum, right? You've all been around the Fell Arboretum, right? Yes, it's pretty cool place. Patrick Murphy right in the middle. He's with the WGLT crowd here, but he's in the middle, the big guy in the middle. He's the curator. And then the Fell Arboretum are all the trees that are tagged and mapped throughout not only the quad, but between the buildings all the way. I don't know about here in this area. This is kind of removed from the rest of the campus. But I know at the Horticulture Center, we have them tagged, as well as the golf course and Ewing. So we're working on getting everything tagged. Really, really want to bring more attention to the Fell Arboretum. The quad is just really an amazing place with some really cool specimen trees, like the Gingko outside of Cook Hall, right? Notorious, right? That female Gingko, nothing better ever happened to that female Gingko. If you don't know, what does a female Gingko do? The male is down by, oh, that's funny. I know there's a male down by CBA too, but that's, whoa, that's naughty. Yeah, if you're not familiar with the female ginkgos, when they drop their fruit, it is horrific. I'd say rotten eggs. And the thing is, the students walk over it, and then they go to class, and it's like, what's that smell? They got the fruit on the bottom of their shoes. Yeah, so now in the landscape business, they clone the male. So that's why you don't really see the female. So this one, the female ginkgo is actually quite old. So we have yeah. Very good question. So last fall and this spring, we are updating the map. The last time it was updated was about 11 years ago. And actually, my student, my graphic design student from Fine Arts, just emailed me yesterday and said she only has a couple questions and that the center part, the quad part, is mapped. So I was hoping they'd be out in time to share with you, but by end of summer, it should be ready to go. Yeah. Ooh, gosh. You know what? Yeah. I don't, that's a really good question, and I could probably answer that for you on Monday. But I don't know. I know that the map from 11 years ago, half of it was wrong. So that means that many trees were taken out or that many trees were added. So, and there's only about 10 trees. I know that in 1944, someone took a record of what was there, and there's only about 10 trees left from 1944 in the quad. There may be in other parts around the university, but just the quad. So that's about what I know. I also know this, that last fall, there was a red oak that came down, and there was this big guess about how old this red oak was. I don't know, what, 250 years or 200 years, and it had to come down. It was, it's by the old Honors Building, so that would be Fell and, what's the Alamo? Uptown North? Yeah, it was right in that area. And it was a cool tree. I mean, all the students that came from the dorms that would go eat at Watterson, they went under this tree. You know, you just have to think how many townspeople went under this tree. And it had to come down. The crown was gone, and it was losing a lot of, you can't really tell there, but if you look at the very top of it, the crown's gone. And so this meant a lot. Several people, especially in the biology building where it was close to, so we had like this whole service for this tree before they cut it down. And this is, Lindsay took these pictures of this red oak, which is beautiful pictures, yeah, she did a really good job. So we have a lapel pin from, the lapel pin has a little cross section of the branch from this tree for you. Yeah, so it's a little piece of history for you today. It was 171 years when they counted every single one of the rings. So it wasn't quite 200 years. But if you think 171, that's older than the university in the town of Normal. So this is kind of cool. And it's kind of sad. This is a little bit sad to see the tree go, yeah. So this is our hope with the Botanical Garden, that we could bring all of this together and then share it with the public and definitely with our students, because we think it's more than just Hort students. It's more than just biology students. There are students in so many different disciplines. Like one of my ideas with the Arboretum, I think it'd be cool to get music students involved, and the music students like compose a song for that Gingko. Wouldn't that be cool? Because I think that Gingko, like Ginkgos are so old, and this one's kind of, the fact that it does this naughty little thing is kind of, it's kind of funny. It's playing the joke on you. So I think it'd be cool, and then you could have like a QR code on this tree, click it, and you could hear the music that the student, wrote. So there's just so many collaborative efforts, I think, with this botanical garden. So we called it, this is just the mission statement we're working on. Actually, we have pretty much agreed on this mission statement, but it's to provide the Illinois State University community opportunities for education, enjoyment, and connection to plants in their natural environment. And we're still in the beginning stages. I think in the next year or so, you might hear more. Monica's going to work on a survey so that we can survey students and the ISU community and then the surrounding community about what would you like to see, how much, do you know what a herbarium is? This week, we actually think it's, with this whole entire process, to get our students involved at every aspect. And this, a couple days ago, I went and listened to these 5 students. They are in a class that's called Design Streak, where they get chosen to work for a semester, and it's kind of like a graphic design studio. So they actually are pretty smart, hardworking students. They get chosen to be in Design Streak, and then they're asked to do different types of projects. And so we've been playing with this name, Redbird Gardens and Botanical Collections. And like I said, we're still planning. That name is not set. But we gave them the information. I took them to the Herbarium, to the Arboretum, and to the greenhouse. I didn't take him to the Horticulture Center because it was February and it was really cold, and and we gave him a tour, and then this week they gave us 5 different logos, actually 6 different logos, and then the students, they're just so endearing. They give us their thoughts on why these logos would be great logos for the university. So whatever the name is and whatever a logo ends up being, I can tell you that we really want our students involved from the beginning process to the end, to forever with this project. So this is kind of where we're at. We're still working on kind of solidifying the mission statement and getting a name and working on a survey to get a good feel for what, our ISU community and the community around us wants with a botanical garden. Hold on one second. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm almost done. So that's the botanical garden. I want to thank you so much for being here today. If you have time, please come to the Hort Center this summer. We would be happy to give you a tour at any time. I have one more last thing for you. You know what Monday is? May Day, yay! What happens on May Day? You get May baskets, right? Yay! So now you have all your little collections and you need something to put your collections in. So we have May Day baskets for you. Yes. And it's like one of the most loveliest things about horticulture, that it is such a, you know, tangible, such a creative discipline. So we have those. Yeah, we're going to celebrate with baskets. And I thank you so, so much. This has been a lovely, lovely hour.